Hey everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much for listening to Alumless for Friday, November the 8th, 2024. This is the Social Sector Strategies edition of the show. I'm Ryan Catherwood, and I'm joined by CMAC founder and CEO, Chris Marshall. What's going on, Chris?
Nothing, Ryan. How are you? Everything good?
Yeah, good to see you this week. On the show, we talk about constituent engagement strategies in education advancement. We're pre-recorded today. It's actually election day. It is Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit about that during the show, but busy week with fall schedules as well. And we had planned to have Tristan Alltimes on the show from Dunn University. Those who may have remembered, we teased him as a special guest on the last episode. We're rescheduling with Tristan, and we were thrilled at the opportunity to introduce formally, and here on our first Alumless appearance, our new CMAC consultant Shane Dunn will be on the show. So get your questions ready for Chris or myself, better yet, Shane. And of course, make sure that you say hello in the LinkedIn event comments so that others can find the show, and we'll circle back and make sure to chime in on your questions.
We are recording in advance, but we'll be watching it live when it's broadcast. So we will be able to interact with people with questions and Q&A as we go throughout the time today.
Yeah, it was just about making sure that we get schedules and get a show in this week. And we're thrilled to have Shane join us, which is awesome. So if you haven't already, of course, subscribe to the podcast edition of Alumless for all of our episodes and to hear our 30-minute bonus segment. We're grateful for Steve Rittler and the team at Alumni-Q for their new partnership with us as a presenting sponsor of Alumless. For over 20 years, Alumni-Q has been partnering with education institutions to build real lasting connections that drive engagement, whether that's through events, volunteer management, or personalized fundraising strategies. Their software is designed to meet busy, accomplished alumni where they are, making it easier to connect, communicate, and involve them in meaningful ways. From personalized event experiences to targeted communications, Alumni-Q ensures your constituents feel seen and are valued. All right. Visit alumni-q.com to learn more. We all will pick up there. All right. Well, so Chris, election day. We've got Shane on the show, which I'm excited to chat with him. He's got a really great experience across the landscape of nonprofits, and that's what we're going to really talk to him about. But we fair to say we service mostly alumni shops in university advancement, right? But we do have some clients that are other nonprofits, right? Like the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Association. I guess I wanted to ask you about alumni-ness in those contexts, right?
Yeah.
How would you describe why some other nonprofits are thinking about alumni-ness?
I think it boils down to, I wrote down 3 bullets on this one, and I think it's these 3. First of all, the people who experience this, and this is true about college or university alumni, but they all have a shared experience, right? They all had a similar time through whatever that entity was. So if you're an Olympian, or a Paralympian, you competed in one of the games, right? If you were at a college university, you went to that institution and so on. And that shared experience is number 1. Number 2, I think the interest in building community among those people that had that shared experience is worthy of continuing the connections that go on well beyond when they actually had the experience, years and decades after. So that's number 2, building that community. And number 3, that community who had that shared experience can shape the current experience of those who are going through it now. So in a traditional context, it's the current students, but in another context, it would be those who are currently in the Olympic Games or Paralympic Games and so on. So I think, that using that constituency to help shape the current experience using, we talk about the 5 T's, right? The time, talent, treasure, but their ties and testimony are all things that members of that shared community can do to help the current experience. So that's where I think alumni-ness comes in across all these groups.
Yeah, it's some sort of like cohort experience, right? Whether it's a sort of another word for it, I guess, where you would have, people who are all given a grant to do research or something this very same year, and there's some sort of class there. Or these are these are members, right? And they experience the association in sort of specific ways as cohorts, and identify with the institution, the cohort, and then also, other networks within the organization. So, like, what types of organizations have similar needs then with, like, I guess all nonprofits when it comes to this, these types of engagement strategy? It's not limited to a certain type of nonprofit.
Yeah. It's we have scholarship organizations. So Coca-Cola Scholars, the Jack Kent Cooke Scholars Foundation. All these are groups that give scholarships out to kids who go to school all over the country, all over the world. But the shared experience there is that they receive the scholarship to allow them to go to school. So that scholarship connection is what they have. So that's one. We did a project around the arts and culinary arts in this example with the CCAP group. We mentioned Olympic, Paralympic already, but we're going to talk about one with Shane here about a study abroad program that he was part of, where, again, for 30 plus years, 35 years for this group, they've had alums who have done this, had this study abroad experience through the same, organization, and that's that shared experience. The other one that I was thinking about in advance of this, Ryan, is I wouldn't ever call these people alumni of a thing, but things like people that survived. The one that came to mind is, remember when the airline landed in the Hudson, the whole Sully crash? Those individuals who survived that crash, they get together every year. And so they're alumni with a shared experience of a near-death experience who have bonded over that and do things for the good of the world now in a similar way. So there's all kinds of examples of this that cut across. I don't know that I'd call them alumni of a.
That's a fun one, though. The Sully Sullenberger fan club, right? And
that's the affinity group, right?
Affinity group. Yeah, it's awesome. All right, well, let's bring Shane out. He's our newest CMAC consultant. We're going to talk with him about his experiences and continue the discussion. All right, Shane, what's going on? How are you?
Good. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Chris. I'm good. How are you?
What library are you in right now? Boston Public Library?
I am in one of the many branches of the Boston Public Library, right around the corner from my house. I live right in Boston.
Love it.
Yeah, love Boston. Well, Shane, welcome to the show. Our friend and new colleague, Shane Dunn, is vice president and senior consultant with CMAC. He's founder of Shane Dunn Social Sector Strategies. So first, a big Alumless welcome to you, sir. Glad to have you. And could you guys maybe kick us off by sharing a little bit about your professional story and how you have come to know Chris?
Sure. No, thanks, Ryan, again. And thanks, Chris. Really, really grateful and humbled to be a part of the CMAC team and to be on Alumless this week. Thanks for asking me to join. So as I share in my bio on the CMAC website, but probably not dissimilar to many folks watching today, I'm an accidental advancement professional. Didn't study going into fundraising, alumni engagement, constituent engagement, and the like. But when I was graduating from Cornell, which is my tie to Chris, which I'll mention in a second, and thinking about moving to a bigger city than Ithaca, or where I grew up in upstate New York, happened to find my way to Boston and found a role in alumni engagement, annual giving, a kind of junior level role here in Boston at the Radcliffe Institute, former women's college, Radcliffe College at Harvard. And I will say one thing led to another. It was not necessarily smooth or lateral or planned in the way that I kind of mapped out my career, but, spent the first chunk of my career at 3 different universities, Harvard, Tufts, and MIT Sloan. And then something we'll probably talk a little bit about today is as I pivoted to the K-12 education space as a fundraiser and leader of advocacy work, primarily due to my interest in social justice and educational equity. And then I bounced back to higher ed, which again, I know we'll talk about later. I was at Brandeis University for a few years and then back to human services nonprofits. So all that to say, Ryan and Chris, I think a through line for me certainly is passion and interest in a lot of different issues that affect humanity. But also I do like people and I like making a difference. And I like, to your point earlier, Chris, I like building community and sustaining it and just seeing where I can bring more folks together from a range of backgrounds. And I think the advancement space has been fun, challenging, and interesting. And I think we play a role that the world needs right now.
Yeah. Well, and you're not new to consulting, Shane. Obviously, you've had your own business for a little while now. But what made you decide to give it a go here with Chris and the rest of us?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, working with Chris has been a dream of mine, and he may share the same. But
Not that
it's really
great. I
good.
mean, Jesus.
I mean,
Let's
I'm
be real.
still new, Ryan, so I'm going to let the people in the comments really give it back. But
I'm not a bad boss. I've been
yeah,
told that
Oh
by
no, I'm
people.
just joking. I
I know you are.
thoroughly enjoy my
You're a pain
yeah,
in the
CMAC.
ass
no.
employee, Ryan.
The
Yeah.
opportunity to join CMAC is really serendipitous and nice and wonderful and appreciated. Honestly, uh, just where I am at this stage in my career, Ryan, I think it's just a really great opportunity to try to coalesce around some of the things that I've learned or done. I've been a professional in advancement in both the fundraising side, the alumni engagement side, but I've also been a volunteer for my alma mater, Cornell, and in a lot of different ways. And so, it'll be really interesting, certainly, to see what kind of value or support I can provide to our clients and friends out there. So that's the CMAC story, but also more broadly, I'll be on it again, back to just where I am in my own career trajectory. I think what's nice about having the skill set of an advancement professional, whether that's the alumni side, but also I have been a frontline fundraiser and major gift strategist and at a few different places. And I think where I found myself at, either expected or unexpected career transitions, I've been able to find some work and, just try to keep my skill set warm and fresh and learn from others, but also importantly, make a difference. And so, in the last year plus, I've leaned a little bit more into my consulting work after a previous role ended. And, again, had a few clients, and then I still I'm able to kind of do that here and there as needed in Boston, but really excited for the opportunity to grow the practice, my own practice, but also support the growth of CMAC during this moment in time when CMAC is growing, and it's really exciting time to be there. So some of it's serendipity, some of it's planned. It's kind of the mix. And again, nice to have a skill set and be someone who has a network that will continue to grow to make a difference.
So volunteer, alumni engagement, all types of giving levels, both in higher ed, many different types of institutions, sizes, business school in one of those, little place called MIT Sloan, and then the nonprofit sector. So pretty diverse array of experiences that you bring to this. So we're thrilled, Shane, that you're here. So we're humbled that you've joined us. But tell us about the previous iteration of your consulting work. So this is the same Shane Dunn Social Sector Strategies. Was that the name officially?
Correct.
Give us some more about that, on those experiences.
Yeah, so for the most part, I've worked, again, I am a Boston-based person. I live here with my family. I've been in Boston my whole kind of post-college career. So I've really, developed, again, a network, but also an understanding of a range of social sector issues in this city, in this region, and of course, which apply nationally as well in many ways. But given my background primarily in education, both K-12 as well as higher education, I really have a passion for how do we just create more opportunity for more folks. I'm a first generation college student myself from pretty modest means. And so, that area is really just a passion of mine in so many ways. And as I mentioned earlier, I worked at a couple of charter schools here in Boston, public charter schools, really focused on just providing opportunity to folks who historically may not have had access to those, all for free. And so my consulting business, Chris, has really been built on word of mouth, but, I've worked primarily with some education organizations or other social justice organizations, doing a couple of things. One, fundraising strategy, as I said, just working with executive directors or the leadership of small shops on developing a more clear and accountable and metrics-driven and individualized focus on fundraising. I've worked with a few organizations that kind of think institutions are the only way, and there's a lot of institutional money in Boston, but just like we see across Giving USA every year, most money in philanthropy comes from individuals, and that includes here in this city, in this region. So I've tried to help organizations just make new connections, develop new strategies, and importantly, learn how to retain and steward donors. So that's been the primary focus, and then the rest is just more broadly coaching. Actually, I've had a couple of clients where I've kind of just been a partner and a listener, and just to try to help validate their work and how to work with their boards on fundraising and other work. So that's been the primary crux of my work.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite roles, is when you get into that thought partner, coach, advocate category where you're providing regular, ongoing support. I think you'd be great at that. So I love hearing that.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely the best part of consulting work are those thought partnership, collaborations where you're sort of along for the ride, but yet helping to drive strategy. And, we opened the show, Shane, with a conversation around sort of alumni-ness, right? And how it's present in different types of experiences and communities. I wanted to ask you, how do you think about that? And you've been more deeply involved with other types of organizations than maybe Chris or myself. How do you think about those associated strategies for organizations across the social sector?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Ryan. I find this a really rich and interesting and evolving discussion. I think first and foremost, the organizations I've worked with outside of higher ed, they've not had the same base of alumni, right? Higher ed has been just buttressed for forever, if you will, on having a shared experience, as you mentioned, Chris. It doesn't mean you're getting 100% giving, we know that, but it really does lend itself to a model that you can kind of, is tried and true in so many ways. Organizations I've worked with, again, a couple charter schools, a women's homeless shelter, and even some of my clients, which are kind of just education adjacent, they don't have that built in. And so you certainly try to find ties. But I mentioned that just to say, I think you can always find ties to the other one of the T's, Chris, is like who is engaged with your content or your work or your ED or your board. Like, again, we certainly try to make friends out of sometimes out of nothing in kind of traditional nonprofits that do not have a base like independent schools or higher ed. And I've certainly done that. But Ryan, to your question, one interesting area that I see is unique. I think about staff alumni a lot. You see this a lot in the corporate sector now, consultant firms, big McKinsey's, et cetera, building out, or law firms, or even Google, right? That's really great. And there's obviously resources there. But on the nonprofit side, obviously resources are different. I'll share a quick example of something that didn't get off the ground, but I always thought about it was, I worked, again, at a couple K-12 public charter school networks. And I thought the students were not able to kind of be alumni or donors in the way you may want for a capital campaign, but they were your best ambassadors, of course, or your testimony for the T. And that's huge. But the teachers, the staff, who every day, of course, are teaching children and who have this really interesting lens that could change public policy if that's your goal, or certainly bring in donors, telling stories, recruiting new students who may not know about your school but deserve that opportunity. I think that's ripe for opportunity for thinking, or so then those on the ground doing that. But then again, a lot of folks leave. There's churn, like any job, but keeping them close, I think, is a really unique opportunity for organizations like that I've worked in. And again, many of us have access to or are interested in other ways. So I do think whether you use the word alumni-ness or not, or alumni, I think expats, like all the different ways we can frame this. I really think, again, if you've been through that experience, there's not 100% commitment to it. We know that, but there's a lot of rich opportunity there for all types of organizations in the social sector, small, medium, and large, that I think we can tap into over time as we try to just build the capacity of our organizations and our sector.
Yeah, I like expats. Sort of its connection with.
I'll be honest, I'm a Boston-based guy. Pats are having a rough year, so I'm not even saying it around the Pats. But it's more the real term than the sports team. But I have to acknowledge where I live and what I'm surrounded by.
Sort of the shared misery of being, in certain being from certain countries, living abroad, perhaps. Yep. Right. Well, as Shane, you bring some awesome experiences from different types of education and nonprofit institutions. But we talked about your work experience, but as a volunteer as well. You're also the president of the board of directors of LGBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, GLAD Law in Boston. How does your volunteer roles provide you with another lens to view the consulting work that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ryan. Really grateful and proud to be a member of the GLAD board every day. And then also as a president, it's a really tremendous leadership opportunity. So I will say two things. First, I think being on a board really provides a lens on empathy around what leaders, both on the paid side as well as board members, go through, or what they're lacking in resources, but also resources that exist they may not know. I think that really is something I'm trying to figure out how that applies to consulting. I think it does, as I'm talking to leaders or board members or volunteers or donors. But having been now in boardrooms, virtual and in person, helping to guide and steer an organization, including during a really significant executive director change, has again just been a unique experience that I will reflect on for a long time, to really try to hone in on what I've learned and what I can provide in my consulting practice with higher ed institutions and others. So I think it's just being at the table, right, and listening and learning and empathizing with the challenges organizations face that are not easily solvable. And I know we give reports at the end, but we know execution is its own cup of tea, and requires a range of levers. And I certainly empathize there. I've been volunteer in boards, but also obviously operating in organizations that I have. I think the second is, again, just the importance of stakeholders. Again, small, medium, large nonprofits, there's a range of stakeholders that you already have, and it's important to steward them and work with them as strategically as you can. Again, challenging with limited resources for a lot of organizations, but still critical. And then second, just how do you continue to invite more folks in to your mission and to your vision and purpose for existing is everyone's job. I believe that wholeheartedly, from the volunteer board members who are giving their time when they have little and they're not getting paid for it, to the staff who may not be getting paid a lot, but are giving their all to the organization every day. And then all the folks whose doors need to be open to talk to them. I've learned a little bit about that. Again, it's day-to-day, some things change, but I do find it very practical knowledge and wisdom and experience that applies to higher ed, to tiny nonprofit, to independent school, to political organizations, and the like. I think the 5 T's apply, Chris, in a lot of different settings, and uniquely different one by one, but overall the framework I still think exists in the GLAD laws of the world, as well as the Cornells of the world, et cetera.
Chris, I was wondering, maybe you can share your origin story with Shane, how you came to know him, and a bit about how, from your perspective, how this new partnership with Shane came to be about.
Yeah, started off at Cornell. I mean, I'm in the AVP role for Alumni Affairs, and I meet this rabidly loyal volunteer for your reunion class. Was my first interaction, Shane. I think I might have been on another committee. I mean, you were on like 5 things, so I can't remember what the first interaction was, but here's this incredibly loyal young alum who's just ready to roll up his sleeves and support alma mater, and it was just a fun guy to get to know, and quickly became friends throughout that process. And I've come to discover this extremely dedicated, passionate, family-oriented man who I've come to respect. I think he thinks of me as a mentor. I think of him as a mentor in many ways for how he leads his life and what he does with his work. And I've been so impressed by everything you've done, Shane. So it was just a natural, when the timing worked out as such that we were looking to expand into different areas. And CMAC is constantly trying to conquer the world wherever we can, and this is a place where we could use some help, and bringing you in was just a natural fit. So I'm thrilled to have your dedication, passion, and balance of family orientation into the work we do. So, and Brian, I've gotten to know Shane's wife and kids, and I was at his wedding and vice versa. So we're very close, and it's going to be a fun journey, I hope and expect fully. So that's my story with Shane, and I'm sticking to it. So
even though he's a Phillies fan versus a Yankees fan, we still survive.
Yeah, we worked through
and
that.
I live in Boston, Yankees fan. I will put that out there, even though I've kind of survived, Ryan. So, I have to be honest with my ties.
As long as we don't disagree on certain affiliations. Baseball teams is one I can live with, Shane.
Yep. Same here, Chris. Same here.
But let me follow that up with Shane. With you've done a lot of really cool things in a fairly young career, but what's the one thing you're most proud of in your of all the professional achievements you've had, besides getting recruited to join the CMAC ranks? What's your other professional accomplishment?
Yeah, that's the most recent one. Good catch. Good call, Chris.
Not much after that, like that's achievements. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to try to quickly name 2, actually, Chris. I know that's cheating, but the most recent professional one that is relevant to our work that I will just name is when I was at Brandeis International Business School, which again, I think we'll talk a little bit about, Ryan, is I was the head of alumni relations, but also a major gift officer with a portfolio of over 100 prospects. And over the course of 3 years, I stewarded cultivated a donor who was not a significant donor for a while. And long story short, made a $4 million commitment to the institution for a professorship focused specifically on supporting a female faculty member, ideally, or someone underrepresented in the fields of finance, business, or economics, which of course is really much the story of those fields in business schools and across the country and the world. And so for me, I lead with a lens of equity and DEI related storytelling and whatnot. And so I really found that to be really a thrilling and exciting professional opportunity to support Brandeis, importantly, and to connect this donor to their passion. And the second was, again, back to my stories of, working, why I moved to K-12 education from higher ed, even though I worked at some really incredible resource-rich institutions, was the opportunity to make a difference at a small shop. I worked at Excel Academy Charter School as a small but growing and very effective public charter school network in Boston, and I was brought in to run a capital campaign, something I had not done in the past. And over the course of 3 years, we raised $15 million, and it led to the growth of an organization that now educates 1,400 kids from, primarily low-income immigrant backgrounds in Boston and Chelsea, Massachusetts, and helped to build a brand new building, which, if you go to Boston and the airport, across the street, across the highway, is a building that I raised the money for, and it's now one of the best high schools in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so again, that's a physical manifestation, of course, of the work we do to build relationships and tell stories and connect passions to philanthropy. And I played a tiny role in that because the teachers and the students do the real work, but our work matters. I would argue, those of us who have the privilege and honor of trying to advance an institution and tell those stories to raise money and goodwill and whatnot. So those two are from different worlds for sure, but I think they just come back to the same ethos that I try to bring, of just bringing folks together and connecting them with good missions and hopes for the world, because I have a lot of hope for the future, even when things are tough.
That's
awesome.
The
well, if you're listening
to I was talking about.
Say that again, Chris.
That's the passion right there that I was just talking about. You can hear it when he talks. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I was trying to think, Shane, of when we first connected. I mean, I know it's been a digital, virtual connection for a long time, but it has been a long time that I've come to start sort of following you on social media as well. Probably, 10 years anyway. But I'm not sure we've had a chance to talk other than when you joined CMAC. So
I was supposed to, before I left Brandeis, Ryan, you invited me to one of your other podcasts, and about business school philanthropy with one of your former guests, Renee Hirschberg.
That's right. When I was,
I left, so here's the chance. Yeah. Now's our chance.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Well, if you're listening to us on the podcast edition of the show, we are going to take a short break. If you're watching us live, then we're not. We're going to keep going. And you're going to get some extra time with Shane today. And this is, I guess we could call this an election day spectacular live show that we're doing with Shane. So we're grateful for our friends at Alumni-Q for supporting us. Steve Rittler, thanks for being a presenting sponsor of Alumless.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate Steve.
Well, Shane, let's forge ahead, talk a little bit about your last role in higher education. That was at Brandeis University as Senior Director of Development and Alumni Relations for the International Business School. And of course, they are CMAC partners of ours, and really one of the most fascinating schools, I think, that I've had a chance to work with. And in many ways, it is a really compelling institution. Maybe you could just share a little bit about, there's a lot we could talk about, but your title was both development and alumni relations. So let's just kick it off. Like, how are you thinking about prioritizing your work on the development side versus the engagement side? How are you thinking about responsibilities for your role?
Yeah, great question, Ryan. And it was a really interesting and exciting role, and the role that I held during COVID. So all of us who had a range of roles during COVID saw what you planned and expected kind of shift pretty quickly in March of 2020, and I will share that too. With that said, I will say, one of the interesting things about the International Business School at Brandeis, Ryan and Chris, is, the name says it all. It's a small institution. There were about 4,000 alumni when I was there, and it hasn't changed mightily in the last much in the last 2 years since I left. But over half of the alumni are outside of the United States. And almost all of it, a majority of those are in China, mainly in China. which is wonderful and amazing. And yet, obviously from a physical standpoint, really difficult to engage. Before COVID, we did travel there once or twice a year, but then during COVID, obviously things shut down and everything turned virtual, and that presented opportunity and challenge, which again, you all know even better than me and have worked with clients and have had your own experiences. But, it's an interesting alumni base, passionate folks for whom that institution, that graduate degree really may have transformed their life trajectory like you expect and hope for from higher education. But one thing that was not as solid really was just how do you engage? What are they looking for? And what's unique that could then turn that into philanthropy? And I would argue we did some of that well and not so well even when I was there. So I'll name where I'm humbled by this work to this day, like we all are. There's a lot of nuts to crack in this work. But it was interesting walking into that constituency. To answer your question, Ryan, about juggling it, I will say I wanted to do it. Let me just start there. Like anyone, it's not right for everyone to take a job like that that's dual, but I was seeking that given I had experiences in both alumni engagement and development and wanted to keep elevating my career, my practice, and challenge myself. And so that's why, and working and reporting to a dean and a central advancement shop was challenging as it is, but also really interesting and opportunistic for me to make a difference and learn and grow. So the juggle really was, at the end of the day, we needed to raise money. So my primary role was as a portfolio manager and trying to raise money and, just try to unearth new gifts and increase existing prospects in the pyramid. And then the engagement piece really was, in my mind, given I'd done this work, I do firmly believe I wouldn't be doing this work with CMAC if I did not believe the integration of the two. I have nothing against folks who don't fully agree or can't do that. It's okay. But I believe deeply in to move mountains, you need to connect and integrate and collaborate. And to be the leader of that, even if I had a small team, I could just every day bouncing back and forth. That's how my brain works. I'm not good at kind of just focusing one thing in one day. I kind of do it all at once. Either it's a skill set or a deficit, but I find it really fascinating, Ryan. So anyway, long story short, it was both a challenge and an opportunity. I will say, and this is not a knock or anything, but since I've left, they've changed it really just to be in development only. So the alumni engagement team has kind of shrunk or changed a bit. The leader there, who I have high respect for, is just director of development, and I think I've heard or seen that the engagement piece has shifted a little bit. And so I'll be curious, and I hope the best for Brandeis and the International Business School. But they don't have that same scope for the job anymore.
Yeah, to be fair, in these times, a dual role like that might as well be development, and alumni relations.
Yeah.
If it's going to be dual, because it's 80% development, or at least. So
I mean, it's just donor engagement, right? And it's donor
yeah.
engagement, and maybe they're alumni, right?
Right. Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah.
I will say one quick comment, Chris. Agreed, of course. And I think what was interesting about the time when I was there, which I said, is when you have 4,000 alumni, even if they're international, you've got an opportunity to get your arms around them, and create opportunities, especially for a relatively specialized school. It was a business school. Our MBA actually was the smallest program. It was more focused on international economics and finance programs, really important programs to the economy and to governments and whatnot. And these alumni were proud and grateful for that experience. But it's still accessible, is what I'm saying. Is so once my team and I figured out what worked, we doubled down, right? Especially during COVID, during the Zoom opportunities. Is let's just put out those faculty members that everyone needed to hear from, or connect to alumni expertise to build engagement that I could then follow up with, on for an ask conversation or prospect visit, things like that. When there's few alumni, even again, it's not like we had 4,000 engagement officers, but it makes it a little bit more accessible and easy to pull your weight a little bit to move the needle on development, which is what I found, and that's where I tried to spend my time of just what's the value add and where can I really harness opportunity given the size and scope of our alumni base.
Maybe you can kind of share, color in a little bit one of the donor relationships that you had along the way that kind of taught you an important lesson about our space, from a perspective of creativity or perseverance or collaboration. Share just a little bit about an important project along the way or relationship.
Yeah, sure, Ryan. I have a few, but the one I'll mention is, when I arrived at Brandeis, again, just trying to understand, when I arrived at Brandeis, my first deliverable was 6 months later, there was a 25th anniversary of the school. It's a young school. Brandeis itself is one of the younger universities in the country, and certainly the youngest R1 research university, but is batted above its weight in so many ways. And then the business school is even younger. So I was there to walk in to help a small team execute a 25th anniversary to the vision of a brand new dean, but also a previous founding dean who was there too. So a lot of interesting politics associated with it, which I know you both know very well. So that was interesting, but part of it was I needed to get to know alumni fast. It wasn't just who's your top prospect pool that you're going to invite to the president's reception with Janet Yellen of all people, Treasury Secretary, who we invited back. It was who's below that. I hate to say that, but what are your tiers, right? ABCD or all the other ways you think about it. I brought the lens of that. I was like, I don't want to just see the folks who've given the 5-6-figure gifts for the last 10 years. That list isn't big enough. Who is in the offing whom you've just not had someone to engage before. I was the first person in the senior role at the business school for 8 years. And so there's a lot of work to be done to cultivate and engage folks. And eventually I found an alum who was what we call BAMA at Brandeis. They did their undergrad and then 1 year later finished with a master's degree. So 5-year program, dual degree. But I also found out that his brothers also went to Brandeis. So really great affinity there, connection. Had given a little bit, but by no means capacity. He'd worked at a really well-known finance institution, which I'm not going to name, but you just knew there was capacity and interest there. And my very first visit to New York City, I found a way to talk to him. The dean and I had a drink with him, and the rest is in a way history. It led to the dean and me just talking about strategy, identifying a board that we could invite him to, a junior board on asset management. But also I was able to, there was an opening in the big alumni board at Brandeis and we needed a rep. And I was like, hey, you've got a lot of good opinions that need to be heard to shake up maybe Brandeis or give some new perspective from your finance background or your brother's perspective or your class year. What do you think? And he said, yes. He's now also on the bigger board at the business school. And he's also increased his giving because of all of that. So I share that to say, like, it's the both and, Ryan and Chris. It's the development has followed with the engagement. And I've talked to this person since I left and not looking for credit, but just acknowledgement, like without those asks, right? Without that pinpoint, precise accuracy around like what you think this person can do and some negotiating. It doesn't always happen that way, but sometimes it does, and they're happy. It's not just that the institution benefits, that's our job. They're actually happy about it, and this is what they've been looking for. They just needed someone to find the path for them and carve it out and be there to listen along the way if things kind of go off path a little bit, and let's bring them back to see what they really want because feedback matters in our job. So it's been really interesting kind of seeing that trajectory just after a few years.
And we know for the folks that listen to our show regularly, we know there's different data points, but the numbers are big enough that, volunteers give it 3 to 5 times the rate of non-volunteers and 10 to 20 times the average gift. It's not a surprise at all to hear what you're talking about, Shane, because you get closer to the institution, understand it better, and your passions align with what the school's doing, passions align with priorities, and then all kinds of things happen, including great fundraising at all levels, major gifts included. So kudos. Great story.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we're going to skip ahead in the interest of time here. Just a couple questions. I want to ask you a sentence completion question. All right. So far, what has surprised you the most about consulting so far is
that you can say on a semi-public podcast.
Go ahead.
I was prepared for this too, Ryan.
No one else.
No one's listening. Yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, and everyone now knows I'm not someone who lacks the ability to talk. So I think maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm still surprised sometimes how I think 70-80% of what folks are looking for is consistent across clients and partners. Right. And some of it actually is just someone to talk to and listen to. And again, obviously, this is a professional relationship and whatnot, but I think people just need someone to talk to. And I think that, and it's great. And we want to provide a range of value add. And I know we do at CMAC for sure. And I'm still new enough to know that there's more to come. But I really am sometimes amazed by like how it's really like there's 10 to 20, maybe 30%, Chris and Ryan, you know better than me, that is different client by client or across like 10, 15 engagements. I don't know, but I expect and know to date already in my previous work as well as the CMAC, like our work is really consistent in a lot of ways, and that's awesome actually. And it presents opportunities for best practice sharing, et cetera. and just allowing folks to kind of move forward strategically. Like, I'm glad we can provide that, I hope, to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
So
I tell clients all the time now, Shane, that you've probably seen and heard me say, where I say, we have learned what's going on in the industry. We are learning the institution, and then the art, while of what's going on, maybe 70, 80% similar, the art of putting those two pieces together and having a custom bespoke solution for that client is something I take great pride and work hard at to make sure we deliver that for each of our clients. So Ryan, you're smiling like I'm saying.
No, I love this. Like the analogy popped into my head that was like, okay, I imagine we're like a puzzle, and it's a puzzle with a picture of a tree, right? That's what we work with, and every puzzle is a picture of a tree, but it looks different when you put it together, right? The tree is different. The
pieces
image
are
is
all different,
but it's a tree in every circumstance, And I feel like there's that's what's fun, that you're making a tree, right? It's different number of pieces to put together, different complexity of the colors, right? And but I think that's really kind of one of the parts of the work that I love so much is how the similarities and the differences that you're pointing towards, the consistencies. So what projects are you interested in personally, as far as consulting goes? Listeners, of course, we'd love them to hire us, every single one of them that's listening. I highly recommend you hire CMAC, in particular Shane Dunn here, for your consulting help. But for listeners getting to know you, what types of projects do you want to be working on?
You're a great agent for me, Ryan. Thank you. So a couple, I think, first and foremost, as I mentioned, I'm really interested by the integration of alumni and development, which again, CMAC has a huge specialty in. Chris has built his own career in business on this leadership. And I think Chris forgot to mention in 2013 and 14, he and I presented on integrated advancement shops at two case conferences. So, this has been with us obviously for a long time, and I'm grateful to have kind of grown up in this space in this way. But I really, again, just given what I did at Brandeis, Ryan, and just the way my thinking goes as a volunteer as well as a professional, I do think the marriage of the two is on equal footing in many ways, even though at the end of the day, the philanthropy, as the numbers the trustees tend to look like and really pay the bills, I do think the strategy behind all of that, and as well as the resource allocation and time, is something I'm continuing to grow into, but have good experience in. I think volunteer management, given I've been, in hundreds, thousands of meetings by now, either leading them or been in them as an alumni volunteer for Cornell, kind of can just help think through what is the volunteer thinking right now, or what structure, systems, processes, policies will help them versus what is not helping them. I think this is where AI eventually will come into play in new and different ways that we have not explored yet. And then I think just, strategy and coaching. Again, I think, as I said earlier, I just find it really enriching just to talk through problems and identify solutions with really smart, also passionate people who just sometimes need to step back and have someone else to talk to on Zoom or in person about what can be versus what it is. And so that piece, but just strategies, putting those puzzle pieces together. I've opportunity to learn more myself here, but I really think I can add value and would be happy to work with folks with CMAC as a partner.
Fabulous.
I have to say, though, Shane, I've been doing this for a little longer, and I still learn something from every single client that adds to the database.
Curiosity,
And every project's a bit different too. Even the ones that are sort of, we're going to do a strategic plan, or we're going to do an assessment, right? They always end up being different in some ways. So,
right.
All right, let's do a real
quick on that to Chris's point. Like, all of us, I'm a higher ed geek. I'll be honest. Like, I have my master's in higher ed. Like, I've worked at 4 universities and now CMAC. Like, this is a sweet spot for edification. I read a lot about higher ed outside of the paid work that we have, and I just find it fascinating across 4,000 institutions in the States, let alone abroad. Like, there's just so much going on that we can be proud of in this sector that is not a system, but a sector. And I find it really fascinating to keep doing the work. And that's why I'm interested and excited about consulting primarily with institutions that, are colleges and universities or adjacent organizations, because I really am enriched by the work that's done on campuses around the world.
Some like-minded nerds here at CMAC with respect to engagement strategies. And let's nerd out for just 3 more minutes here before we're up against the top of the hour, but switch gears just slightly, and we'll move into our Friday cheers section. We're actually recording this on election day, so maybe Friday cheers is something election related. Shane, maybe it's not. Maybe it's something else that's on your mind. But we'll do a quick Friday cheers, and we'll have you on your way off to advocate, knock doors. I don't know what's next, but I'm sure something is next. So, Shane, what is your Friday cheers?
Yeah. Yes. Happy election day to all. Hope you all voted, even after the fact this will have happened. But obviously, really interesting week here. I'm not going to go down the election route, even though that is my proclivity. I'm not going to lie. I'm much a politics geek and civic engagement guy. But one thing I'm reading right now, Ryan, is interesting to me. I'm sure like a lot of folks, I'm a big Adam Grant fan, at Wharton, who does a lot of organizational psychology and behavior. And I think a lot of his work applies to leadership, of course. That's what he really does, but advancement work. So I'm reading a really great book. Hidden Potential is one of his newest books, and I recommend it. I'm a third of the way there, so I can't give all the detail yet, but he's always got me hooked with his stories and his data, and just, again, the real applicable nature of the work, of the research that he pulls out on. And again, Hidden Potential really is kind of what you think it should be about. Of like, there's just so much under the surface we don't think applies to leadership or change. Or importantly, impact, regardless of where you begin in life and where you go and what opportunities exist. So excited to dive in even more, because I do think his work and a lot of organizational behavior applies to our work.
Hidden Potential is a great recommendation. I follow Adam Grant on LinkedIn, and every time he posts something, I find myself sort of nodding in my head, right, in agreements. So. All right, Chris, aside from turning off your crazy loud alarm, what's on your mind this?
That was my alarm to get Shane off. He's got to run. We're obviously past the broadcast of this. We passed the election. I hope everyone did vote.
Yeah, we'll know what happens by the time people listen.
Yep. Yeah, but here's my plug. After 58 plus years on this earth, I will divulge a little bit of my interest here, but I don't care. My 58 years have told me that if women are in charge of more things, we'll all be better off, including running our country.
Here. So
that's my Friday cheers.
About time the ladies take over for a while.
We are well aligned on this call, Chris. Thank you. Agreed.
For sure.
We may lose a few clients, but I'm okay with a couple that we'll gain from this.
Yeah. I totally agree.
That's my Friday.
This particular excellent leader in Kamala Harris will be a tremendous president, I hope. Fingers crossed. So my Friday cheers is, I was just going to say, there was a lot of discussion about election fraud and things that are corrupting our vote. And when I went and I voted, I remember I walk in and you get your ID, and then you have to spit back and tell them your address, and then they print out a piece of paper with a QR code that's, is this your address? And here's your QR code. Then you go to another station, right? And okay, this is your county, and this is the stamp of your county, and here's your ballot. It's unique to your county, and you're going to go over here, and once you fill it out, then you put it in, and okay, this is how you see that it's been registered. What I noticed was that if everything happened the way that it happened in Virginia, right, then there's nothing anyone could possibly complain about in terms of votes counting, because the checks were checked. And I felt 100% secure in that my vote was going to be counted. So, fingers crossed on that one too. So, but kudos to the Chesterfield County poll workers, because they made early voting easy and the actual experience of voting easy. All right. So we'll wrap it up. Shane, welcome to CMAC. Thanks so much for our hopping in at the last minute.
Can I plug our next guest real quick?
Oh, yeah. Who's our next guest?
Dr. Lauren Villanueva from Syracuse University, and she's amazing. Please, if you're listening or watching, please join us in a couple of weeks.
Yep, 2 weeks' time, we'll be back. All right, go forth and go USA. All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Bye.